All right. Well, good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Evening. So just a quick little review of last week. Last week, we just basically looked at the trends of digital media. And we started right off saying technology is just a tool. It's neither inherently good or inherently bad. It's how we use it. How we use that tool. It can be used for good, or we can, allow it for bad things. And so the point of this whole series is we have to be really good at discerning how we use these tools. We looked at how technology is increasing and increasing. It's everywhere. It's all the time. And really, it's changing society in a very quick way. And you just have to look around yourselves. It's changing the way we communicate. All you have to do is sit down in a restaurant and watch the people around you. 20, 30 years ago, people would actually talk to each other, and it would be extremely rude if somebody all of a sudden just turned and looked away. And now that's become commonplace. You'll be just having a conversation and they completely disengage with you and look at their device. So communication is changing. And it's not that they're not communicating, it's just they've stopped with you and they're communicating with someone else in some other way. It's changed how the way we use our time. So as I've said, it's a new tool, and it's a tool that keeps on changing, it keeps on morphing and adapting, and people just can't seem to get enough. It can be used for good or bad. The question we have to ask, what are we gaining from these new tools? For example, tonight, here's an excellent way of using technology, but also to be very cognizant, to be very aware of what are we losing when we take on these technologies. So that's just a bit of a review. Tonight, we're going to look at what happens when digital media is in the driver's seat. So basically, when we say, you know what, there's no constraints, no principles, no rules, I'm just going to consume it all. And I'm not going to worry about time and all these things. What effect does that have on us? I thought it was kind of curious that just this past week, we read about and heard about in the news another danger of technology with the Samsung phones and how they're all being recalled because there's a physical danger to them, that they could light on fire. And I just found that peculiar, but you're seeing technology come up all the time in the news now. But these talks aren't about necessarily the physical dangers. We're talking about the emotional dangers, the social dangers, society, and of course the spiritual dangers that we can run into if we don't discern, if we aren't mindful. So let's start with a little story. This is a story from 2010, and a fellow named Robert Ziegler was using his GPS to help him get to a location he had to go to for business. And the GPS told him to turn on to a dirt road. And, he thought, well, the GPS knows what it's doing. I'll just follow this dirt road. It must know where I'm going. And then as the road got narrower and narrower and steeper, he started having these uneasy feelings. This doesn't seem right, but he still hoped. The technology is good. You can follow the technology. Eventually, he realized when he got into this position that the GPS had led him astray. And by then it was too late. There was no way he could turn around. He was actually on a sheep path. And he got stuck, and they actually had to bring in a helicopter to get him down. This is in the Swiss Alps. And I thought this was a good story to start off with, because we can't be mindless when using technology. We can't let it lead us astray. When we have these uneasy feelings of, I've spent way too much time using my device, or, some of the things I'm watching, I don't know if I should be watching. We have to trust those feelings and say, I've got to stop. I've got to step back and think about things. We have to remember from last week that, the experts, the people who are making these technology and the software, they're saying it's seductive. and they like it that way. And they're saying it's persuasive and it's addictive. And so we should have all these alarm bells and caution signs going up saying, okay, let's just slow down here and figure out what we're doing. There's a quote, and unfortunately I didn't write down who said this. But they said, technology makes us forget important things we know about life. Technology makes us forget important things we know about life. And I think that's true. We forget about the importance of eye contact when we're talking to people. We forget about the importance of giving somebody our full attention. We forget about the importance of going outside and what that can do for us, going for a walk and in nature. We forget about the importance of quiet and just having solitary times. And so these are just some things to keep in mind. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use the Bible. And because the Bible is a great resource, and these classes that you have are fantastic. And letting people know that the Bible isn't just some text from thousands of years ago that's sort of frozen in time. This is a very living document, and it can help us in our families and in our relationships. And it definitely can give us some direction when it comes to new things like technology. And so we're going to look at 4 specific areas that I feel deal with our walk or our spiritual life. They deal with our calling. You know, if we are Bible believers and we believe that God has called us, then we have to take notice of these things. So we're going to look at time and how digital media can consume our time. We're going to look at the content that it delivers. We're going to look at how it affects our thankfulness and our contentment, and how it affects our relationships with one another. So let's look at time consumption. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a couple of verses. I have them in your notes. And I suggest when you have some time to go through those a little bit more. Those are just a sampling of, these are just a sampling of some things in the Bible that sort of give us some direction. And I suggest you read them in context and you look up some cross references and investigate it a bit further. But here's our calling. Okay, so here's what God has asked of us. In 1 Timothy 4, verse 15, you know, he's asking us to give ourselves wholly to these things. And when he's talking about these things, it's the things of God. It's things like forgiveness and love and honesty and compassion and humility. You know, that's what should be on our mind. That's what we should be spending our time praying about and thinking about. In Psalm 1, verse 2, it says, delight to meditate on God's word. So we're supposed to take time to think about God, think about his word. In Psalm 63, verse 6 and 119, verse 97, it talks about night and day. And it's not just something you do once a week for an hour or once during the week, a Wednesday night or whatever it might be. You know, night and day, make it a daily thing to take time with God. But what's happening, so that's the calling, that's the goal. But as we looked at last week, you know, we're looking at 7 to 11 hours per day with digital media, which comes out to 56 to 77 hours per week. And that's with the world. You know, most people have a 40-hour a week job. And so their time with digital media even surpasses that. It's even starting to surpass the amount of time we sleep. So 56 to 77 hours of ingesting things from the world. And I just took my life and I thought, well, how much time do I spend with God? And so our family, we do Bible readings every night, and that might take half an hour, 40 minutes, sometimes 50 minutes. And we go to a Sunday meeting, and we have a Sunday school. So that takes a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours there. And we have a weekly Bible class, maybe an hour or two there. Occasionally, every other week, we usually have a young people's thing. So it's an hour there. And then there's prayers. But when I add it up, it's still only about 13 to 15 hours a week with God. And so I sort of compare those two things. If I'm out of control, remember this is when digital media is in the driver's seat. If I'm out of control with digital media and just consuming as much time and not directing it or guiding it or harnessing it in any way, my time spent with God is losing. And if this is sort of a scale, I'm ingesting way more of what the world is presenting than I am with God. 1/5, I may have mentioned it last week, 1/5 of Americans say they're almost constantly online. So, I think we may begin to start to ask, what can we do to get this at least a little bit more balanced? Maybe increasing what I'm spending with God and decreasing what I'm spending online. Psalm 23, is that the right? Yeah. This is a very important psalm, and it makes some strong points here. It says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul." And it's just bringing out that he leads me beside still waters. And when we spend 56 to 77 hours or whatever it might be less for you, we have to keep in mind a life online provides no still waters. It's full of different types of content, and we'll get to that in a minute. But we should know that the digital media, online activities will consume all of our time if we allow it to be. In fact, they have people who have jobs who are creating ways and very well-designed ways to keep us online, to keep us clicking and swiping and sharing and going from different links to different links and to like things. They figure out punishments if you don't go on. I know my son had some game on his little phone, and if he didn't go on, little warnings would come up, your village is going to be destroyed or whatever it was. And so he was being punished for not going online, which made him want to go online. And then there were the rewards. If you do go online a lot, you get more rewards. And so they have ways of just making us want to go online. I think of my own, we have an old BlackBerry, and a little red light flashes whenever we get an email. And you just sort of feel this little bit of excitement. Oh, I got an email. I wonder who it is. I've got to open that up. And it just keeps you going back. You even think of what you might think of as benign websites, like news websites. And there's been these subtle changes in those websites where, headlines used to tell you what the news story is about. Now they leave you wondering. So it might say something like, NBA star found dead. And, well, I wonder what NBA star is. I better click on that and find out. So it creates more questions so that you get in there and you get into the links, and maybe there's a video and you follow that. And so our time spent with God or doing godly things starts to struggle to keep up. And really, when you think about it, prayer and reading, just meditating, that's not as exciting as swiping things and videos and the entertainment value of online. So it's quite a battle that we have to be, very careful that we're fighting. With my kids, I know we have this saying, oh, a funny thing happened on my way to my homework. Or we might take it as adults, a funny thing happened on my way to prayer or Bible study. I started, okay, I'm going to search this. And all of a sudden there was, oh, look at that. There's a video clip. I'll just click on that. Oh, there's another video clip. And oh, look at, there's a little quiz or a slideshow. I'm just going to go through those pictures. And then you're going to text somebody, or you're going to, send an email. And you just boom, boom, boom. And before you know it, 2-3 hours are gone. And you haven't done any of your homework or prayer or Bible study or whatever it might be. And it didn't feel like that much time because it's so many different things. And so this quote from Psalm 23, you begin to see, there are no still waters online. It's just this constant influx of things. Some people call it a frenziedness. And if you look at that quote from Psalm 23. It says that God, he restores my soul. And that word restores, it means to heal, to repair. And so you think about it, that time spent in quiet reflection and in prayer, it can rebuild us. And experts are saying that brains need rest, that they need boredom, that they need stillness. When you're online, your experts say your brain is not getting downtime. It is just as active, if not more active than any other time, because you're seeing things, you're thinking about things, you're clicking, you're making connections, your brain is going. It's not downtime. And other experts are saying, you know what, we're losing our ability to think deeply about things. We're losing our ability to be alone. And these are some of the most important things to develop a relationship with God. Let's go to, I don't know if I have this quote. Yes, I do. Here's the real danger. And this is from Psalm 115, verses 3 through 8. And as I read it, just think about digital media. It says, their idols are silver and gold, the work of human hands. They have mouths, but do not speak, eyes, but do not see. They have ears, but do not hear, noses, but do not smell. They have hands, but do not feel, feet, but do not walk, and they do not make a sound in their throat. Those who make them become like them. So do all who trust in them. When I read that, you know, I started thinking about when you see somebody using, you know, let's say a smartphone, you know, they don't see what's around them. They don't feel what's around them. Sometimes they walk into poles. They walk across busy streets and get in accidents. They don't talk to other people. You know, they can be around someone. They can be sitting at a dinner table with somebody, and they don't talk. And when they're using them, they don't listen to other people. The more we use these, the less and less human we become. And so the real danger is if we let digital media go out of control, we become more and more what they say here, like idols. We become less and less human. So I've just put that out as, this is a real danger. This is a picture of somebody who's not showing any discernment. So we'll move on, and we'll talk about content. So let's look at what's the goal. What's the Bible ask of us? What does God ask of us? Well, you have these quotes there as well. James 1, verse 27. God asks us to stay unstained from the world. Leviticus 20, verse 7. And all of Leviticus really is calling us to be holy, like our God is holy, you know, separate, different from the nations around us. And we're told to sanctify ourselves, you know, clean ourselves and be holy. That word holy means to be separate. 1 Peter 1, verse 15, it says, be holy in all your conduct. So in everything we do, we have to think about how we're behaving. And is this acceptable to God? So that's the calling. I think I have in your notes, yes, Ezekiel 23, verse 14 to 17. So I'm just going to turn that up. You can just, if you want to look it up, you can. If you want to just listen, you can. But I found this kind of fascinating, that this isn't a new thing. And really the digital media is a world of images. It's just so visual, and it presents us with so many images. But images have always been a bit of a problem for people. And this goes back to Ezekiel 23. And then in verse 14, it says, but she increased her harlotry. She looked at men portrayed on the wall, images of Chaldeans portrayed in vermilion. So this is sort of a metaphor, but this is Israel, and they're seeing other nations, and they're seeing these images on the wall, and they're looking at what they're wearing, and they're sort of seduced by these images. In verse 16, it says, well, I'll read verse 15 as well. Girded with belts around their waists, flowing turbans on their heads, all of them looking like captains, in the manner of the Babylonians of Chaldea, the land of their nativity. As soon as her eyes saw them, So as soon as she sees these images, she lusted for them and sent messengers to them in Chaldea. Then the Babylonians came to her in the bed of love. They defiled her with their immorality. So she was defiled by them and alienated herself from them. So it's just a picture of, it starts off with just these visual images, and they sort of entice her, they enticed Israel. And then she lusted after what she saw, and I want a part of that. And so it just shows the power of images. I thought I'd share that with you. But this is a quote from John Dewey, who's a well-known, or was a well-known educationalist. And he said that environment teaches. So whatever our environment is, we're going to learn from that environment. And this links into what we know about the brain nowadays. We know that the brain isn't just some static, unchangeable organ, that it's plastic, that it can change, that it can adapt. And that's why people who've been in terrible accidents or have had strokes, they can retrain the brain, different parts of the brain, to compensate for the parts that have been damaged, that the brain can be retrained. And so when you think about it, if the environment teaches, then, and if the brain is plastic, if it's moldable, then what you think and how you think is up for grabs. That if we present ourselves with certain images and certain content, that will gradually change the way we think. It will change what we think of. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is our environment teaching us? What does 50 hours online, what does that environment provide for us? What are we learning? What are we thinking about? Now, God warned us in 2 Timothy 3. God told us what these days would be like. And as we read through this, you're going to see that everything we read about is basically, you know, things you'll find on cable TV. It's things that can be presented in YouTube and on so many different avenues of digital media. And so God was good. He warned us. It says, in the last days, there'll be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And so all these things, you know, if you have cable TV or some of those network channels and a lot of those shows, this is the content that they're presenting. And the scary part is, even though the makers of it are saying, you know what, you really shouldn't watch this unless you're 18 or older. I'm talking to kids who are watching this and they're 8, 9 years old. And so if this is their environment, this can be a pretty scary outcome for them. In our school, in all of Canadian schools, and I know it's starting to grow in the United States as well, they have media literacy. So in our school, or our province, it's actually a little box on the report card. We have to teach kids how to learn to read media so that they don't get fooled, so they don't get tricked, so that they can dissect what they're learning and say, okay, this is true, this isn't true. Hey, they're trying to trick me here. They're trying to sell me something, or they're trying to make me believe something. So, you know, governments and policymakers are starting to see, okay, we have to teach kids and adults, I would say, to dissect some of these things. And one of the main things we teach them is that all of the media, everything you see, isn't just some random thing. It's been planned. A lot of money has been spent on it. Research been done. It's been tested. It's orchestrated. And it plays on our insecurities. It plays on our fears. And they're out to get something. It might be our money. It might be our time. It might be our ideas, our thoughts. And so we have to be very careful and learn how to read it. This media idea of media literacy. And the interesting thing, I'll just go back a slide there, is it's never really presented as this. We're going to show you a TV show that's going to make you a lover of yourself, or a lover of money, or proud, or arrogant. It's sort of sold to us as entertainment. This is entertainment, or it's humor. It's not taking the Lord's name in vain. It's funny. It's not sexually immoral. It's romance. It's sold to us as sport or personal achievement, as success, not a love of self. It's personal achievement. Success, it's acceptance. It's being responsible. It might be called modern or fun. So they put these, positive twists on it, and that's how it's sold to us. So we have to be aware of that. Now there's 3 topics that you're going to be, and I am going to be, completely pelted with and exposed to if we don't discern. Once again, this is when digital media is in the driver's seat. And sometimes it's called the nicotine of digital media, because it's the addictive part. It keeps us coming back. And the first one is consumerism. I'm not sure if I have, no. Okay, so we'll just keep it on this. Consumerism, materialism. That when we go online, we are going to be bombarded with sales pitches, that we need to buy this and we need to improve that. Why would you live with a car that's that old? You need a new one, a fast one that will make you look better among your friends. Kids are bombarded with cereal commercials and sugary drink commercials. And it's just this, I mean, if I was a marketer, if I was a business owner, a smartphone would just be my dream, to be able to get that into the hands of kids and be able to sell directly to them. There's a fellow named Sut Jolly, and he's sort of an expert on sales techniques and in the media. And he made a very interesting point. He said, the falsity of advertising is not the appeals it makes, but the answers it provides. So it's not the appeals, the lies aren't in the appeals it makes, it's in the answers it provides. And when you think about it, a lot of marketing, that's what it does. It tries to say, you know what, if you buy our product, you're going to be more popular. We'll solve that problem. You'll be happier. You might be depressed, but if you buy our product, you'll be happier. Or you'll live a more exciting life if you have our product. And yet all the research says buying things, purchasing things never has long-lasting happiness or long-lasting contentment. It just leads to more discontentment and even more anxiety and depression. So for example, we take our students and we look at a Coke commercial, and the Coke commercial shows all these kids drinking Coke, and all of a sudden they're all friends and it's a party and it's a great time. And so we dissect it and we say, is that really what happens when you buy a Coke? And then we look at the truth. What is the truth about, not to just pick on Coke, it could be Pepsi or any soft drink. What's the truth there? Well, the truth is you'll probably get tooth decay, and there's a better chance of getting diabetes. And we look at the truth. It doesn't bring you more friends. It takes more money out of your pocket. And then we create posters showing the truth of Coke. And we do that with different ideas, just to give kids that sense of, yes, I have to be aware of what they're doing. Jesus told us in Luke 12, verse 15, he said, life does not consist in the abundance of things. And how wise that was. The abundance of things doesn't make us happier. It doesn't make us more content. It doesn't make us more godly, that's for sure. So materialism is one of the nicotines of digital media. Oops, I keep forgetting. The next one is violence, especially with young people. It's the violence that keeps them coming back. Some of the most popular digital media or media things are violent video games. They outsell movies, they outsell TV shows. I'm going to give you some statistics. Now these statistics, it's really hard to find good statistics on violence, but back in 1999, now this is before a lot of violent video games, before smartphones and YouTube. So these are old stats. This is just TV. They said a child from the time they're 0 to the time they're 18 years old will have seen 16,000 simulated murders and 200,000 acts of violence. And so you have to think, does that have an effect on people? Seeing that many simulated murders and 200,000 acts of violence. And you have to ask yourself, okay, that was 1999. Do we think the statistics are better now, or are they worse? I just think about what they'll show you on news channels now. They won't show you simulated murders. They'll actually show you the actual murder of someone or the killing of someone. And we may not think that has an effect on us, but it does. And especially a young person who may not be able to discern, okay, that was far away in a different town at 3 in the morning, and they might not have that, and it can create anxiety. I mean, just in one video game nowadays, in an hour, a kid might, with a first person, shoot, hundreds of people. And so I think those statistics are much worse now. And experts are saying this is becoming a serious public health issue. It's something that we should worry about. So there's materialism, there's violence. These are the things that the content we're going to be delivered if we don't discern. The third one, of course, is sex. Once again, an old statistic, 1998, it said in 1 year of watching TV, you will be exposed to 14,000 sexual references. And most of those are of sort of not within a marriage, not a healthy relationship. They're usually associated with violence or pain or suffering. And once again, ask yourself, do you think it's better since 1998, or do you think it's gotten worse? And nowadays, the sexualization of young girls, and now it's happening to boys as well, it's just becoming, if you're not discerning, it can be very disturbing. And I'm a father of a young girl, and I actually fear for my daughter when I think about all the content that young boys are being delivered, and how are they going to view my daughter? Are they going to view her as a person with feelings and a family, or are they going to view her as an object? And that can be terrifying. And the sad part is it's put forward once again as entertainment. It's put forward as something that's funny, not something to be, to worry about. But we should discern. There's a really good study done by a lady named Yelda Ulls from UCLA. And she looked at 16 values promoted by TV shows. And she looked at it in 2 sections, from 1967 to 1997. And she sort of ranked those values as they came up in the TV shows. And the number one value from TV shows from 67 to 97, where it was family. The number 2 value was community and charitable actions, volunteerism, things like that. The number 16th was fame. Fame was the least of value. And then she looked at TV shows from 1997 to 2007. And the number one value that was shown and promoted in those TV shows was fame, self. Family had dropped, I think, to number 11, and community, I think it dropped maybe even to 16. So you can just see that there's been this shift. And if you think of it, you just think about TV shows back in the 60s, even before that, Leave It to Beaver and Happy Days and the Andy Griffith Show and Lucille Ball. It was about family, and there was sort of this protection of children. And now the shows are very different. And this isn't just Bible believers who are saying, oh no, there's all these problems, and these are secular professionals who are sort of sounding the alarm bells and saying, society's going in a really bad direction. We're seeing narcissism go up and empathy go down. And that can be disastrous for society. So when digital media is in the driver's seat, we become lax. we allow that envelope to be pushed, and we start to make exceptions. Okay, just this is a really funny show. We'll just sort of ignore some of the bad stuff that's happening, or we'll make excuses. Just this year we'll watch this, or just this one show. I mean, at worst, we're gluttonous and we just take it all in. But we have to be mindful. We have to have standards, and we have to have rules, and we have to be guided by God's word. This is from a book called Holding the Head, and it's all about keeping Christ in the forefront of our mind. And Michael Ashton wrote it, and he said, "The time to worry is when the world looks attractive, and we fail to see its wickedness or hear its blasphemies. When we say there's no harm in things that have no goodness, this is a sure sign that the hold on the Lord has slipped, and the world's hold has tightened again." So I thought I'd share that one with you. The third negative effect, if we're not in control, is how digital media can affect our thankfulness and contentment. So we'll just look at what the Bible says. In Psalm 50, verse 14, we're told to offer the sacrifice of thanksgiving. 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 18 says, "In everything give thanks." Hebrews 13, verse 5, "Be content with what you have." And 1 Timothy 6, verse 6, "Godliness with contentment is great gain." So these are two very valued things in God's eyes. Being thankful for what we have, giving thanks in everything, and being content with what we have. And I've put on your sheet, or on the back now, that thankfulness and contentment is on one end of the spectrum, and covetous and grumbling is on the other. You can't be both. You can't be thankful and grumbling at the same time. You can't be content but just wishing you had more. You're either one or the other. And maybe we're somewhere in between, but you can't be both. And I just ask the question, what way do you think digital media pushes us? Does it push us towards the thankful and the content? And it can. I think it can. I mean, there are times that I've watched, Ray was mentioning this charity called Agape in Action, and some of the great works that they do, and some of the videos that I've watched. And it's made me very thankful for what I've had, but it's also made me content with what I have and wanting to give more. So digital media can, but if it's not in control, if we're just, allowing whatever to come into our lives, I think it pushes us more towards the covetous and grumbling. And I'll try to demonstrate why. When we go online, I'm just going to show you a couple series of pictures. If we're on social media, for example, we might see that our friends are going on all sorts of wonderful vacations. We might see perfect families all the time. And how come that family always gets along so well? Look at their beautiful house. My house, there's parts of it that aren't finished. The kitchen floor slopes. It's cold in the winter, and we might start to say, if only we had a bigger, better house. And we start to get pushed towards that, kind of grumbling. And I'm not quite content like I used to be. We see people with their perfect kitchens. And, we always hear about people getting things remodeled and redone. And it can create in us an envy. I think sometimes it's called an Instagram envy or a Facebook envy. Or we see people who are just in perfect shape and they're always exercising and they're going on huge bike rides and they just post it all. And we get to look at it and say, wow, I haven't exercised in a week or a month. And, I've got some flab on me that shouldn't be there. And we see all these pictures of people that are perfect, not just on social media, but, in commercials. It's always the people who are super fit and super beautiful, and it can create a discontentment in ourselves. And when you think about it, characters on TV and movies, They rarely have boring, low-paying jobs. They always have the exciting jobs. I think my son's getting ready to apply for university, and they were saying the number one program that's being applied to now is in criminal investigations in law. Everybody wants to be like those detectives on those detective shows because they have exciting jobs and they solve the problems all the time, and they're able to do it in 1 or 2 days. And there's always this romance and excitement. You never see people, teaching grade 5, 6, or people with low-paying jobs. Advertisements are designed to make us feel inadequate, and once they get us to feel inadequate, then they can sell us things to make us feel less inadequate. We have a society that worships the rich and the famous. There's all these renovation and real estate shows and people making lots of money, and there's Instagram and Facebook envy, as I mentioned. We live in a society that has an addiction to perfection, and the pressures to live up to that can be intensified when that's all we see online, and whether it's through TV or commercials or whatever it might be. And so we may end up being dissatisfied, not just dissatisfied in ourselves, but we also might start to have unrealistic expectations of our spouse or of our children, or of our jobs. And that can lead to discontentment and all sorts of problems. The grass is always greener on the other side. So this was an article. It's a very long article. This is the main gist of it, in the New York Times Magazine. And he wrote, "We're constantly exposed to people who have more than we do, and rarely see those who have less. A lack of perspective, that's a formula for dissatisfaction." And I know that whenever I start to feel that way, all I have to do is think about those Agape in Action videos, those widows in Africa, and those young children that have been orphaned. And all of a sudden, I realize, okay, you know what? I'm not poor. I'm very rich. Jesus warned us. He said he talked about the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches, and that they would make us unfruitful. And so he warned us as well. God warned us what this world was going to be like. Christ warned us, don't let the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches take us away from that calling. The last aspect I want to look at is relationships. And if you have your Bibles, I want to read Deuteronomy chapter 6. Once again, if you just want to listen, you can, but Deuteronomy 6, starting at verse 4. Okay, Deuteronomy 6, starting at verse 4. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up." And I just wanted to read that to you because the way I read that, I see God saying to us, I want you to invite me into your home. I want to be a part of your meals. I want to be there around the dinner table with you. I want to be a part of your discussion. I want to be there when you're traveling. I would like to be there when you get up in the morning and when you go to bed. I want to be a part of your family. Other verses, Hebrews 10, verse 25, we're instructed to keep meeting together. Psalm 127, verse 3 says, "Children are a heritage of the Lord." The way I see all these things is God gave us relationships to help us on our walk, to help us with this calling. And he's given it's sort of like a glue. Our families are so important. Our uncles and aunts, our cousins, our children, grandparents, members of our church, our meeting. this is where we figure out who we are. This is where we figure out our personality, and it starts to grow. We figure out how to deal with problems. It develops the way we think about things. Families are essential. They're a foundation. And I believe God gave it to us. And he said, I want to be a part of that family. Families are intimate. They're nurturing. And we have I listened to a program by a doctor at a hospital nearby. It's the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario. And he is dealing with more and more mental health issues with children. And he says there's 2 reasons why health issues have sort of gone through the roof. They don't have enough beds for all of the children feeling anxiety and even suicidal. And he said, number 1 is the family is being destroyed. And he said the number 1 reason the family is being destroyed, he says, is technology. It's eroding our interactions. It's eroding our family members. We're having to struggle with one another for attention. Kids are going online for help. They can't find the help from their parents. Their parents are busy. And for other reasons, the family is starting to fall apart. And when a kid goes online, they might find some good advice, but there's a whole lot of other stuff online that can be destructive. The family was supposed to be there to help kids through. And so that was his expert advice, and he gave a whole lecture on many of the things I'm talking about. I want to show you, let's see. Yeah, okay. I'm going to show you 2 videos. Hopefully they come through all right. That sort of, the first one is a sort of an ironic demonstration of the erosion of family. So hopefully this will work. I'm gonna try it. Oh. It's not working. That's too bad. I'm gonna, I won't try this. Well, I'm going to pass through this and this one. I'm going to come back to it maybe in a minute. I'll try a different way of bringing it. If we go to your note, there's a quote there at the bottom called Catherine Steiner Adair. And it's The Big Disconnect from page 30. It's from one of the books that I mentioned. And in it, she says, nothing can match the power of our attention, our capacity to connect in affirming, loving, nourishing ways. Screens and technology cannot match it, but they can replace it if we let it happen. So we cannot let digital media get out of control. It will gladly consume our time, present us with an assortment of ungodly material, leave us discontent and unsatisfied, and damage the very relationship or relationships God has given us to help us on our walk. So we have to be there for each other. If it's out of control, as we've talked about tonight, we lose our time. There's issues of what we're consuming. There's an effect on our thankfulness and contentment in our relationships. So hopefully I've given you some Bibles or some verses in the Bible to help guide, because the Bible is a terrific guide to help us through these things if we take the time to meditate and read it. Next week, what we're going to do is we're going to get back into the driver's seat, and we're going to look at different tools and strategies and principles that will help us so that we don't get out of control, so that we can use digital media in a positive way, but not let it slip into an uncontrolled and messy way. So I'm going to stop there, but I'm going to try to stop this share, and I'm going to try it again, because those 2 videos really do have a good message. And I'm gonna try this one. And so this is all last week's. I'll just quickly go through this. Technology, eh?
It's not good or bad.
Did that. Okay. I'm gonna give it a go, okay?
Okay.
Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can now. Yeah.
Okay, so I present that because,
Hey, we didn't see it. We didn't see it, John.
oh, you didn't get to see it?
No, we were just sitting here waiting to hear you, and we didn't hear anything.
Oh,
All I see is you're logged into Prezi.
oh. I guess I have to share that content, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, you were frozen there for a minute or a few minutes, but now you're at least unfrozen.
Okay.
We still just see, we see the Prezi screen, the login screen.
Okay, let me, you want me to try one more time?
Yeah, try it one more time.
There we go. Maybe.
I'll try this again. Oops. That's not right. Oops. Oh.
All this pressure now.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back to Prezi.
Yeah. Vital principles for.
No, it's not even. Oh, there you go. So in case it doesn't work, I'll tell you what that first video was. There's a video in the book by Catherine Steiner Adair, The Big Disconnect. She talks about what she calls, I'm not sure if I put it on there. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think it's going to work.
We at least see the screens now.
Yeah.
You see the picture.
Yeah. But it's not running the film. So I'll have to figure out why that's not working. But she talks about, what does she call it? Essential zones of interaction. So she says, you know, when you're putting your kids to bed, or when you're having dinner with the family, or you're going for a walk, that these little zones of interaction are essential to families. And what this first video was, it's actually a phone commercial, and it's showing all these little zones of interaction and how people are disengaged from their families, and how it's just that erosion of family. But then at the very end, they suggest you buy a better phone, and then you'll solve the problem of phones. And quite often that's the way society looks at things. If we're having a problem with technology, all we need is better technology. The second video, which I really wish we could watch, but you could maybe watch it afterwards. It's called Stronach's Still Face Experiment. Do you see the image of the little baby?
Yeah, do you have the links to those? You can email me those links, and then we can watch it that way.
Okay, because it demonstrates, so it takes a mom, and she engages her baby, and the baby's engaging back with her, and they're pointing at things and smiling, and then the mom does this still face, which quite often you see when somebody's looking into a phone or looking at an iPad or a screen where there's no emotion. And it just shows in, I think, a 30-second block the effect it has on the child, and that's sort of why I have this last quote here: are we sticking one another in ugly situations? Because this mom really puts her baby through a little bit of an emotional upset, because she's not interacting. She's not showing any emotion at all. And unfortunately, we have to sort of ask ourselves, are we doing that when we're not discerning our use of media? So I'll email you those right after I exit this. Is that a good idea?
Yeah.
And then for sure the Stronach still face one. That's one that I think is very powerful. But are there any questions before I close in prayer?
What was your question earlier?
Yeah, I was just questioning, I was kind of writing down something, and I didn't get that verse that you were saying. They have eyes, but they will not see. They have ears, they will not hear, and they have a mouth, but they do not speak. Just that verse, so I can look at it later and do some research on it, or just
Yep.
kind of do some
It was Psalm 115, verses 5 through 8. Did you get that?
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Did you put the Michael Ashton quote back up?
Sure.
Did you go read it?
No. There.
Thank you.
Just a minute, everybody's pulling out their phones to take a picture. Hold on a minute.
I'll get later, but it's too long to try to write down.
Yeah. I think it's so important that A lot of people anymore don't take time to have their own thoughts and meditate on their own lives and with God, because they're so busy with the media. I see it in my own family.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've seen some too. I've seen quite a bit, you know. Yeah, just spending some time without digital media and with the Bible and the Word of God, and then like trying to come into society and see and listen and talk to them, and it's like you're speaking a foreign language
Yeah.
sometimes.
I think that we can try and get wiser about how to maybe use media to help people to see God too. As a community, I think we're so in the ice age about that, you know, people are looking, even though they may not know it, but do we even have a flag out there to say, well, check this out, you know, but
Yeah, that's one thing that really attracted me about what you're doing with this, is that it is, a lot of people are becoming more and more isolated in their own homes, and they don't go out as much. So I think we have to be good at developing things like what you're doing here, where we can reach people. Okay, they may not want to go out, but they can still learn about these things. So I think it's a good tool for that.
Okay, any other questions for John or comments tonight? Hold on, Dana's got one. Maybe.
Any chance of you coming here?
Actually, I'm a teacher, so I get summers off, so we've thought about it.
We would love to have you come visit. Alaric especially would love to have you come visit. Okay, O'Dane.
well, I guess I was thinking it's interesting that, I mean, there's a mercy that we have to have on people if we have the right eyes to see that all of the insecurities and fears that our culture is growing more and more thinking in is partly to do with this, but they don't understand that it's directly connected.
They don't.
And, you know, even in our ecclesias and things, how to help people see that hospitality and relationship and being just together is gonna heal. Like you said, I think that was so profound to think of that verse that Jesus said in the light of this talk, that that the cares of the world and the deceitful of riches choke the word and it becomes unfruitful. You know, there's just so many things that we aren't going to wake up to until it may be too late in some cases or whatever.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, I've given this talk a couple of times, and a lot of people are, you know, they see it and they're completely aware of it in their own lives, and then to break loose of it, though, is a different thing. And we see it, like, we've set up rules and things in our family, and you can maintain things for a while, but then slowly it gets broken down again, and then all of a sudden you wake up like, what are we doing? We've got to go back to what, you know, these principles that we know we want to live by. And it just sort of wears you down.
Yes, and kudos to you raising children in this day. We raised ours when computers were just starting, and our children thought we were so controlling, but we were. But I know now, if we were raising them now, we wouldn't be able to control it because they have to have it for school or whatever. And so it's a really tough battle for parents, and especially if they don't even realize they need to be fighting the battle. But you're wise to see that you have to fight it, even if it's against their wishes, or even if they see all their friends doing it. It's a lot harder world to give them that message than it used to be.
Yeah. And it's trying to teach them that, you know, I want them not to control it because I'm telling them to, but because they see the value in it, that they want to. And that's an uphill battle for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the other things that I saw was, I mean, there's a lot of cartoons that are mostly not for children, that have adult content in them. And cartoons and the colors and the attractive to children. In some cases, the parents don't know how to, they don't know how to activate the parent controls on the TV. And in some cases, the children are watching adult cartoons. So, I mean, that's kind of,
A lot of times parents don't even see the need to activate the parental controls. They see no problem with it.
They don't see any problem.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because, like I said before, that all these things are manufactured with a purpose. And so some of those cartoons, there's a reason they're cartoons. They are targeting those young people. I think it's the same with a lot of these R-rated movies and video games. It'll say on the package, you have to be mature or 18 or whatever, but the majority of their marketing is going towards enticing, younger users of those things. So, just being aware of that and trying to get that message out there.
just one last thing. I looked at it, and they had Avon books for Avon products. And now they have one product that's an Avon product. It's a smartphone for a toddler. It's not a real phone, but it looks just like a real phone. So it's got the touch buttons like an iPhone. It looks just like a phone. It's kind of like a toy to get the kid ready. For the smartphone.
Yeah.
Our granddaughter isn't 2 and she knows how to swipe on the phone to get to a game. And I don't like it. It's
Yeah, I wouldn't do
That's
not
crazy.
something that I'm proud to say.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I have a nephew who, if you give him a real book, he'll try to swipe the real book and wonder why the page isn't moving.
And like you say, the Bible becomes very antiquated compared to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, John, well, if you want to go ahead and close with prayer, we will then let you go tonight.
Okay. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. You are the great and one and only creator and sustainer of all things. And we approach you thankful for this evening, thankful for one another, and most importantly, thankful that you've left us your word. For it contains the great hope that we have. It contains great direction to help us live our lives in our relationship with you, in our relationship with those around us, in our families, that there's great wisdom in these things, and we pray that you will help us to apply them to our lives, that you will help us to be a light for those around us, that others too might see the great promise, the great hope, the great stability that's found within your word and its instructions. And as we read it, we pray that you will give us the ability to think deeply about it and to understand it, and most importantly, to live it. So please hear our prayer, watch over us, and care for us. We thank you for all things. In your Son's name, Jesus, our Savior. Amen.
All right, well, thank you again, John. And we
Yeah,
will-
I'll email you those things right now. I don't know if people want to stay around, but I'll do that right away, okay?
Perfect, thanks. We'll see you next week, Lord willing.
Okay, bye-bye.
Good night.